Hello guys, and this is Scott here, and welcome to the second Christmas historic weather video. And in case you couldn't tell in this one, we're having a look at the famous snowy winter of 1946-47. We did the winter of 2009 to 10 in yesterday's historic video, and now I thought it'd be a good idea to have a look at the winter of 46-47, since it's Christmas Eve and this is a very notable cold winter. Of course, it was made notable for the very cold February. It's the coldest February on record, and some of the extreme snowfall amounts that happened in that month. So just before we get started, I'd like to say that many of the facts and figures that you hear in this video come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. He has a fantastic resource of weather information going back to even the Dark Ages in some cases. So as always, I'll leave a link to that website in the description, and the charts you see in this video come from the historical archive at wetterzentral.d. They have an archive of charts going all the way back to January 1871. So as always, if you want to request a historic video, it can be of any month and any season, going right back to the start of 1871. Right, so let's get on with having a look at the winter of 1946-47. So we're going to actually start off in autumn 1946 on the 28th of October, because we actually get a very big autumn swing here. We get, you can see there on the 28th of October, we actually have a bit of wet weather there, but we actually have an easterly spell at the start of November that actually brings some cold weather that then actually leads on to exceptionally mild weather and then back to cold weather again. So I just thought that it'd be a good idea just to kick off the video by showing that. So there we are on the 28th of October, and we've got low pressure clearing away into Europe. And as we move into the 29th, you can see that high pressure that was in the Atlantic builds through the UK, and into the 30th it moves up to Scandinavia. So we start to bring in a bit of an easterly wind. And in fact, October 1946 was actually a very easterly month. It's one of the most easterly months on record, in fact, but because of that, it actually made it quite a dull and cloudy month. So we finish off the 31st of October with that easterly wind, and that takes us into the start of November 1946. And as you can see, that easterly carries on going, and we actually have some pretty chilly air aloft actually. So those are actually the upper air temperatures on the 1st of November 1946. And you can see that we have the -5 Celsius isotherm actually in parts of the southeast, which is real proper winter air. But actually, surprisingly, it doesn't bring any frost this. It just brings pretty raw, cloudy weather. So really pretty miserable weather that's barely above freezing, but not cold enough, for frost or snow. So a pretty grim start to November there. Well, that actually doesn't last, because as we go through the 2nd of November, the high pressure actually sort of shifts a little bit, and the orientation of it actually starts to bring up a very warm southerly wind. So as we go into the 3rd, you can see that we actually bring up a very warm southerly all the way down from Spain and even parts of North Africa. And as we go into the 4th, we actually break the all-time November record. We actually record 21.7 Celsius at Prestatyn in North Wales. And actually just up until this year, that was the November record. Actually on the 1st of November 2015, this year, we actually broke that. But this was a very long-standing record that was set in 1946. And it's actually not just Wales that's exceptionally mild on this day. We also record 21.1 Celsius at Hawarden Bridge in Chester, and we also even record 20.6 Celsius in Edinburgh, can you believe? So we go from that very cold start to exceptionally mild weather, In fact, I'd almost say that's warm weather actually, at the start of November. So there, actually, those are the upper air temperatures. So again, you can see why it's so mild. And that again goes on into the 5th, so we have a very mild bonfire night, before by the 6th and into the 7th, that high pressure then starts to build back through the UK again. And as we go into the 8th of November, it actually then positions itself just to the west of the UK. So then we actually bring a northerly wind back. So we sweep away all that very mild air and bring back very cold air that we had at the start of November, and that goes on into the 9th. So again, it just shows really, I actually said this in yesterday's video, that the weather that you get in autumn, doesn't dictate what you get in winter. As you saw there, we had very mild weather, but then this winter coming up is a very cold one. So, again, just why I say that you shouldn't, judge a winter just by the autumn that's before it. So there we are, actually starting winter. So there's the 1st of December 1946, and December 1946 has a central England temperature of 3.1 Celsius. And so that's a colder than average December, but it's not a desperately cold December. This month has a very mild start and end, but actually a very cold easterly spell in the middle of the month. So that actually, those two cancel each other out into a very slightly colder than average month. So there we are on the 1st of December, and to be honest, there's no signs of cold weather there, to be honest. We have a straight westerly flow through the UK, and we have a deep Icelandic low and a pretty strong Azores high. So, we're just enhancing those zonal westerlies through the country. However, do notice that there is slight signs of high pressure around parts of western Russia, as that actually plays a feature actually as we go through December, and in fact actually into the rest of the winter. So as we go through the 2nd and into the 3rd of December, we actually bring a pretty deep gale through on the 2nd. And then on the 3rd actually we bring a bit of snow to the northwest. There was actually quite a bit of cold polar maritime air entrenched in this area of low pressure. So for parts of northwestern England and western Scotland, this actually brings just the first snowfalls of the winter. Just a bit of a precursor, of what's to come later on. Well, that doesn't last really, because as we go through the 4th and into the 5th of December, we bring that westerly flow back. So we return to the mild and stormy weather through the 6th and into the 7th. But again, just notice how high pressure is lurking over the western parts of Russia, and as we go into the 8th, it's just slowly inching further and further westwards. But obviously at the same time, we've actually got low pressure over the country, so it's, still mild and wet for us. But as we go through into the 9th, you can see that those low pressure systems actually start to just undercut that high pressure. So we very slightly start to turn the winds into the east there. So very gradually we're turning the weather a little bit colder. And as we go through the 10th and into the 11th of December, we bring a very strong southerly gale there. But again, just notice how alarmingly close, I should say, the Scandinavian high is getting. And as we go through to the 12th, you can see we actually set up a real battleground UK situation there between the Icelandic low and the Scandinavian high. And that goes on into the 13th, before by the 14th we finally actually bring those easterly winds in. The Scandinavian high actually wins the battle. Actually no surprise there, considering it's a very big high pressure system at 1060 millibars, so that really is quite a deep high for over Scandinavia. So it's no surprise it actually wins the battle. So we slowly bring those cold easterly winds in through the 15th and into the 16th of December. And again on the 17th of December we have those very cold easterly winds blasting through the country. You know, those are the upper air temperatures on the 17th of December. You know, the -5 Celsius isotherm is pretty much through the whole of Great Britain and through quite a large part of Northern Ireland. And the -10 Celsius isotherm is over the southeast. So they have very cold winter air blasting through the country. Also notice how cold it is over like parts of France and Germany and the European Alps. You know, that must have been a real cold early winter blast there. And that goes on into the 18th of December, and on the 19th we actually bring some heavy snow into the southeast. And we have some very large snow showers off of that easterly wind there, as is often the case with easterlies in winter. So this actually brings, as I said, some very heavy snow to the southeast. Again, you know, just a little bit of a precursor of what's to come later on in the winter. But by the time we get to the 20th, however, that high pressure does actually start to break down a little bit then. Because as we go through the 20th and into the 21st, you can see that it is starting to collapse away now, and we are bringing those gales back, the westerly gales back to Scotland, and those come into the whole country by the 22nd and into the 23rd. So actually, despite it being, you know, such a notably cold winter, you know, the Christmas of it, you know, isn't very seasonable at all. Because we have those very far-fetched southwesterly winds, so we actually go very mild at the end of December. And there's the chart for Christmas Eve, and we're bringing a trough of low pressure through the country, so we're bringing heavy rain through the country. And then into Christmas Day we also bring a bit of a gale into the northwest. So it's a jolly old wet and windy Christmas Day there in 1946. And the same can be said for Boxing Day as well. We keep those very strong westerly winds blasting through the country into the 27th and the 28th of December. And really that's where we finish off December 46 actually. As we go through the 29th and into the 30th of December, we keep the Azores high very close to the UK, and we keep those zonal westerlies, you know, coming off the Atlantic, keeping us fairly mild and pretty wet as well. And that's where we finish off 1946. We actually bring an exceptionally windy system into the north of Scotland there. No doubt that was quite a notable weather event up there. But again, just notice how high pressure is lurking over Scandinavia and western parts of Russia. And that takes us into January 1947, and January 1947 is a cold month actually, with a central England temperature of 2.2 degrees. So you know, that wouldn't be a bad month in any winter really. But of course actually it's nothing compared to the February that's coming up. So there we are on the 1st of January 1947, and we pretty much just carry on where 1946 left off really, with the zonal westerlies blasting through the country, and it's mild and fairly wet and quite windy as well. And that goes on into the 2nd and into the 3rd of January. And you can actually see there on the 3rd of January we've got a very deep Atlantic storm system out in the Atlantic. That's all the way down to 945 millibars that. And if that had actually, you know, directly affected us, that would have really caused some damage. But, you know, luckily, if you don't like storms, the Scandinavian high does just hold it at bay. So it is windy for us, but, you know, not as bad as it could have been. And then as we go through into the 4th of January, you can see that again we've got that battleground UK situation. And from that Scandinavian high, we are just bringing a bit of cold air in off the continent. And that actually collides with a weather front on the 4th of January. So again, we just get a bit more snow falling on the 4th. Again, as I said, just another little precursor of what's to come. But actually this early part of January isn't really that much related to the the bitterly cold prolonged spell at the end of the winter. This is actually, if anything, more just a typical winter cold spell. Because as we go through the 5th and into the 6th of January, you can see, that the Atlantic is starting to slowly win the battle. The high pressure over Scandinavia and Western Russia is starting to retreat back eastwards slightly, and we're bringing a very strong southerly wind in there, so that must have been a very mild day on the 6th of January. And the same can be said into the 7th and the 8th of January, where again we have another, exceptionally deep storm in the Atlantic, down to 940 millibars again. But, thankfully the the Scandinavian high does just hold it at bay. And then that does bring blustery winds into the 9th, but again, not as severe as it could have been. And that takes us into the 10th and the 11th of January. And then really through this middle part of January, we actually go into a pretty zonal period then. It's quite mild, this middle part of January. So through the 12th and the 13th, we keep those mild southwesterlies coming through the country, and it's quite wet and windy. And that carries on into the 14th and the 15th of January. And you can also notice actually that we've got the Azores High building into Europe. And now that actually starts to play a feature with how the very severe cold sets up. Because as we go through into the 16th of January, you can see that it's just edging further and further into eastern parts of Europe, and trying, to link up with that Scandinavian high. So as we go through into the 17th of January, you can see now that it's starting to do that, and by the 18th it's starting to build a ridge through the UK. So this is, now the big turning point now. This is where the very severe cold that we know of winter 1946-47 is really starting to get going now. Because as we go into the 19th of January, we're building that high pressure through the country, and by the 20th we start to turn the winds into the east. And this is the very remarkable feature now, because between this day, the 20th of January, and the 10th of March, can you believe, the winds are predominantly easterly across the UK. And that is the longest continuous easterly spell we've ever seen in the UK. Of course, that encompasses the whole of February, so, this is where it starts to get very interesting now. And so we keep this high pressure through into the 21st and into the 22nd. So we're starting to bring those east to northeasterly winds in through the country. So temperatures are starting to fall away, and we're starting to get snow showers affecting the east coast. And that goes into the 23rd and the 24th of January. And by the 25th of January, now we're starting to see some very low temperatures. And again, those snow showers are still piling in on the eastern coastlines. So we're starting to see some pretty deep snow depths now. And as we go through into the 26th and the 27th of January, well, the pattern just gets more and more severe there. You can see now that by this point the North Atlantic Oscillation is going through the floor negative. We have high pressure to the north around Scandinavia and Iceland, and low pressure around the Azores and into the Mediterranean. So that is a very classic negative North Atlantic Oscillation. And by the time we get to the 28th of January, we actually get a major blizzard in the southwest. It's very hard to see what's going on, but you can just see that we've got those darker blue colours over the southern half of the UK. Those bluey green colours where the colour goes a bit more blue. And that is a weather system, a weather trough, and what that actually does is bring some heavy snow going into the 28th and the 29th of January in the southern half of the country. So this is the first, major blizzard of this severely cold weather. And then on the 29th of January, again that pattern just gets more and more severe, and we record a low temperature of -21 Celsius at Writtle in Essex. And actually, the temperature throughout most of eastern England doesn't get above -5 Celsius this day. So it really is, we're going well and truly into the freezer now, with those bitterly cold easterly winds blasting through the country and into the North Atlantic. And on the 30th of January, we actually bring this next weather system into the southwest. And this actually brings 17 centimetres of snow to the Isles of Scilly, can you believe? Which, you would normally expect to actually be one of the mildest places of the country. It's not unusual for those islands to actually go a winter without seeing a frost. But, for them to get 17 centimetres of snow in a blizzard really is, truly, truly remarkable. And that's where we finish off January 1947. We're bringing heavy snow through the southern half of the country, and we're keeping those bitterly, bitterly cold easterly winds screaming through the country. And that takes us into the start of February 1947. And as I said at the start of the video, February 1947 is the coldest February on record, with a central England temperature of -1.9 degrees Celsius. It's actually, as I said, the coldest February on record, and it's actually the coldest month since January of 1814. So it really is an exceptionally cold month. And it's actually the second coldest month of the 20th century, just behind January of 1963. However, because it's such an easterly month, as I said, it's easterly all the way through. It's actually a very, very dull month. So, considering, the country was still just recovering from World War II at this time, it was, really quite a grim month, and probably the last thing they needed, if I'm honest. But nonetheless, there we are on the 1st of February, and again we're just bringing heavy snow through the southern half of the country, and that goes on into the 2nd of February, and those are the upper air temperatures on the 1st of February 1947. We've got some very cold upper air temperatures across the country. We're all within the -5 Celsius isotherm, and the -10 Celsius isotherm is over the northern half of the country. And as we go into the 2nd of February, this is when I meant to say it, we're bringing another blizzard into the southwest. And what's interesting about this month actually is for the southern half of the UK, it's actually a wetter than average month. And this is actually quite unusual, because many colder than average winter months are known for being quite dry. But because we constantly have this pattern, high pressure to the north and northeast, and low pressure to the south and southwest, it just means that it's a very wet month. Obviously all that precipitation is falling as snow, but there's more precipitation in this month than what you would expect. However, that's actually not true for the Scottish Highlands actually, because they actually record no measurable precipitation in the whole of February 1947. Which actually, that is the only month that has ever happened in. So again, just another reason why this month is, a truly, truly rare and exceptional month. And so there we are, as I said, on the 2nd, with heavy snow blasting through the country, and that goes on into the 3rd and into the 4th. We have a deep channel low there, and that would normally be perceived as just the holy grail of snow events behind the polar low. That usually the channel low is known for bringing some exceptionally heavy snowfalls to most of England and Wales, and we actually see plenty of them through this month actually. And that actually carries on into the 5th of February and into the 6th. As you can see there, we have bitterly cold air blasting through the country, and more low pressure systems lining up in the Atlantic, getting ready to deliver a huge dumping of snow. And that goes on into the 7th and into the 8th of February. Again, we bring another blizzard into the southwest of the country. That goes on into the 9th and the 10th of February. Again, it must have, you really have to realise this must have been a truly grim month for those alive at the time. You know, just constantly cloudy and temperatures barely above freezing. You know, if anything, to be honest, I'd probably describe it as an almost revolting month for those, despite how interesting it would be if we saw, you know, a repeat of this now. Yeah, and again, as we go into the 11th and the 12th of February, again, those easterly winds just blast through the country. You know, the North Atlantic Oscillation is still, you know, through the floor negative, and we're bringing more channel lows through the country into the 13th and the 14th of February. So again, it's just very, very, very snowy. And then actually, as we go into the 15th of February, we then actually get a bit more of an anticyclonic flow. So through the 16th and the 17th, we're generally more just cold at this point. Though there is actually still snow around, actually, because there is heavy snowfall recorded on every single day this month as well. You know, it really is, you know, the holy grail of winter months, this, if I'm honest. And that goes on into the 18th and the 19th of February, before again we bring another blizzard in on the 20th and into the 21st of February. You know, we have a really strong Greenland high there on the 21st. Look at that, 1,070 millibars. And actually that deepens further through the next couple of days. And that low pressure over the UK clears away again, so you know, more heavy snow to the southern half of the country. You know the drill by now. That goes on into the 23rd and the 24th of February. And just look at that Greenland high on the 24th, 1,085 millibars. And at the time, actually, that was the highest pressure, you know, the highest recorded pressure in the UK. Sorry, not, well, on Earth. But that was bettered in the 1980s, I believe. Which again, you know, it just shows why it's so cold over the UK and such an exceptional month. And then on the 25th of February, we actually record the lowest temperature of the month, which is of minus 21 Celsius at Walburn. So, you know, very, very cold weather. And then overnight 25th and into the 26th, we actually bring a very, very severe blizzard to the western half of the country. You know, look how tight those isobars are, and that low pressure's coming into very cold air. So this brings, you know, a huge blizzard with gale force winds, even storm force winds in fact. And that goes on into the 27th, and that's actually where we finish off February 1947, with heavy snow still across the country. And there is a picture of February 1947. I'm not sure what date this was taken on, but you know, just heavy snow through the country, you know, must have been a real shock to those people. And again, there's another one, you know, of a bus that's just been completely stranded in the snow. You know, again, just look how deep the snow is. And then we go into the start of March 1947, and you know what? March just carries on in the same vein. It's just extremely cold, extremely bitter, and there's yet more blizzards throughout this month. So there we are on the 1st of March, and this month has a Central England temperature of 3.6 degrees, which is a bitterly cold March. And it's also actually an exceptionally wet March as well, with an average of 177 millimetres of rain, well, precipitation across the country, with obviously most of that falling as snow in the first half of the month. So there we are on the 1st, and you know, we've got those easterly winds still blasting through the country, you know, the snow's still falling, and those are the upper air temperatures. Again, you know, the minus 10 Celsius isotherm is across the country, pretty much across all of the country, so you know, it's just bitterly cold still. And that goes on into the 2nd and into the 3rd of March. And then on the 4th of March, we actually record minus 21.1 Celsius at places like Durham, Peebles and Braemar. So again, you know, exceptionally cold for early March. And again we bring another band of very heavy snow through overnight 4th and into the 5th of March, and that carries on into the 6th. You know, the people at this time must have honestly just been wondering, when's it ever going to end? When we ever going to see spring? But you know, again it's just carries on. You know, winter shows no sign of ending. The Greenland high's still there, and the lows are still, you know, diving south into southern Europe. So you know, it's just carrying on bitterly, bitterly cold, and we stay the same into the 7th and into the 8th of March. And then as we go into the 9th of March, this is actually where we start to get the first signs of the winter breaking down actually. But you know, it still stays very, very cold, because as we go into the 10th of March, you can see it with the first time, you know, in almost 2 months, we bring a southwesterly wind into the UK, and this actually brings some very heavy snow up through the country, and this was very slow moving snow. But you know, because the ground is just so frozen, you know, this southwesterly doesn't really do much of anything to the temperatures, so it stays cold through the 11th, and then on the 12th of March we bring the Great Blizzard to Scotland. This is a very major snowstorm that affects Scotland overnight the 12th and into the 13th of March. Again, you can see just how tight those isobars are. So, you know, the winter just, you know, shows no signs of letting up, even though the winds are going into the south and southwest. And you know, the Greenland high tries to surge back, so again we bring the easterlies back to the northern half of the country on the 14th and the 15th of March, before by the 16th of March we finally start to bring a very long fetched southerly wind in. So finally we start to blast away that cold air and bring a very mild southerly wind in. And as we go through the 17th and into the 18th of March, this is actually coupled with heavy rain, and we start to see all of that snow throughout the whole of the winter starting to thaw away now. And you know, at the time, you know, they were probably cheering, you know, finally the winter's coming to an end. But you know, spring arriving has a final kick in the teeth, because it thaws the snow so quickly that throughout March 1947 we see some very severe flooding. And as we go through into the 19th and the 20th, you can see why, because again we're keeping mild air coming through the country with heavy rain, and that goes on into the 21st and the 22nd. We actually bring temperatures into the mid to high teens there on the 22nd, and into the 23rd and the 24th of March. So you know, the final kick in the teeth, you know, the cold has gone away, but it's just been replaced by rain and flooding through the end of March 1947. And again, that carries on into the 25th. And there is actually a photo of the flooding in March 1947. So, you know, these people didn't win either way, to be honest. They had to, you know, tolerate a severely cold winter when the country was still recovering from World War II. And then when the winter finally broke, they had to put up, you know, with flooding into March and April. So, you know, you know, the weather was pretty cruel to these people. And that's where we're going to finish off the video, actually, on the 26th of March 1947. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the winter of 46-47. Please do keep your suggestions coming in. I do enjoy making these historic videos. But as for now, because it's Christmas Eve, I'd just like to take the time to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And stay tuned next year for even more videos. You know, I hope to carry on with all these historic videos and all the time lapses I make. So, you know, thanks for watching this year, and I'll see you soon.